excuse me, and welcome to the Planning Committee. The first item on our agenda is any apologies for absence. I know of one.
Yeah, from Councillor Keating, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Item 2, any disclosures of personal or prejudicial interests? Are there any? I have one. On item 2, the Pentequith Road one, it mentions Kevin Hengoyd School, which I'm a governor. So I can clear that. No others? No? Item 3 is to approve and sign the minutes of the previous meeting as a correct record, and you find that on page 1. Page 2, page 3, and page 4. Would somebody move that as a true record, please? Thank you very much. Yeah.
I'm a governor of Pendrava School, that's mentioned in the same paragraph.
Okay, thank you both. Okay, yeah, it's the wise thing to do. Item 4, any items for deferral or withdrawal?
None for
No?
us, Chair.
Thank you. No? Item 5 then is the determination of planning applications under the Town and Country Planning Act 1990, and the first one on our agenda is at Cocket Valley Solar Farm, and that's yours, Hayley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. There are no updates to report on this application. This application has been referred to Planning Committee as the original development met the alternative development threshold set out in the Council's constitution. The application site is currently being used as a solar farm since its construction completion in 2017, following full planning permission being granted in August 2015. This is a Section 73 application which seeks the variation of 4 conditions relating to plans, landscape and habitat management, surface water management and sustainable drainage systems of the previous planning permission granted in August 2015 for the construction of a 4 megawatt solar farm and associated structures and works. This application proposes a number of changes which will be discussed in detail through the presentation. Next slide, thank you. This slide shows the location of the existing solar farm and application site outlined in red, whereas the next slide shows the aerial image of the site in relation to the surrounding area. The Cocket Valley Solar Farm is located within the rural landscape to the south of Wynarloedd, within the open countryside and located within the northeast Gower and Cocket Valley Special Landscaped Area. The majority of the site is surrounded by open fields and wooded areas, with residential properties located to the north and west of the site. Access to the application site is via an existing track located off Wynarloedd Road. This slide shows the existing approved layout of the solar farm, which will remain the same as there are no changes proposed to the site layout. The changes that are proposed as part of this application relate to, firstly, an extension of security fence to encompass the existing distribution network operator substation building and an addition of a gate. Secondly, the removal and relocation of planting, which is currently situated outside the security fence, in line with the approved details of the previous landscaping scheme. Thirdly, additional CCTV cameras and poles, an increase from 5 to a total of 32 camera poles with 34 cameras for full perimeter CCTV coverage. And finally, improvement to the drainage system to prevent road erosion. The proposed development are additional measures that will enable the site to be protected from future theft and vandalism and ensure the site remains operational. No public letters of objection have been received regarding the proposed development. Therefore, the main issues for consideration in this application relate to whether the proposed alterations to the stated conditions are acceptable in terms of the principle of the development, visual amenity, residential amenity, highway safety, ecology, green infrastructure, trees and drainage. The principle of the solar farm development in this location has already been established under the previous full consent, and in terms of visual amenity, the solar farm development as a whole has also been formally considered acceptable and improved under the previous 2014 consent. This Section 73 application is therefore to consider the visual impact of the proposed alterations to the originally approved scheme, including boundary treatment, hedge planting, CCTV poles and drainage details. It can be considered that the proposed alterations are relatively minor, especially when taking account of the development of the site as a whole. However, it is also noted that the site is in a particularly sensitive location, both in the open countryside and in an area designated for landscape protection. The application is supported by a landscape and visual statement, which concludes that with regard to landscape, the proposed changes to the development are unlikely to alter the level of visual effect predicted within the previously submitted approved landscape and visual assessment. The submitted statement has been reviewed by the authority's landscaping team and is considered that the proposed details are acceptable. It's also noted that proposals will provide a social economic benefit from improvements to the security of the site, preventing damage to the solar panels. Moving on to discuss the proposed changes in more detail. The plan on the screen shows the location of the proposed fence around the existing substation as outlined in a yellow square. The extension of the fence to encompass the substation building and addition of an extra gate would have a very limited direct physical effect on the landscape. The extra fencing will be 2.4 metres in height and would be palisade instead of post and wire to enhance security at the site, and will be required to sit a minimum distance of 2 metres from the substation for safety reasons. There would be some extra posts in the ground, but it's considered that these would cause minimal disturbance to the ground and associated vegetation. Effects would relate more to a potential change in how the landscape is perceived, owing to it being a more industrial appearance. However, this area of the site is well screened from the surrounding landscape and is not publicly accessible. This type of boundary treatment is also associated with infrastructure such as this within the surrounding area, so it's not considered to be out of keeping with the approved use of the site. The photographs here show the substation in question, which is currently located outside the boundary fence of the site and which you can see has also been subject to vandalism. The plan on the screen shows the relocated hedgerow and planting inside the fence and the areas of the site affected. The cross-section plan, labelled section AA, shows the layout of the planting in relation to the access track, swale and the PV panels. The relocation of the planting would visually alter the appearance of the site when looking towards the boundaries affected and therefore how the landscape is perceived. However, successful establishment of planting within the boundary would provide a backdrop of vegetation to the fence rather than the open views as per the current situation. As the proposed changes would facilitate delivery of the visual mitigation of the site, it is considered to be in line with the approved scheme and the proposed changes are considered acceptable. Next slide, please. The photographs on the screen show where the existing planting has been placed outside the boundary fence and has failed due to acts of antisocial behaviour and vandalism. The current planning permission includes 5 CCTV poles, with an increase being required to provide full perimeter CCTV coverage as part of the application. The plan on the screen marks the location of the cameras and poles to be installed across the site with blue hash lines. The poles would be within the site and set into a small foundation that would have a very limited direct landscaped impact. The poles would be located at regular intervals along the boundary of the site. Each pole would reach a maximum height of 2.4 metres and will be 0.20 metres wide and made of metal and will be situated approximately 2 metres within the wire mesh security fencing, and they will be located in various positions around the perimeter of the site. In view of this, while the increase in the number of CCTV poles and cameras could be regarded as significant compared to what was previously approved, due to their height and location behind the current mesh fencing and the fact that there are already this type of development located on the site, as well as a number of existing telegraph poles and lighting columns in and around the site, the visual impact is considered to be limited, especially when considering the nature and use of the site. In relation to the proposed drainage works, the access tracks within the site have suffered from erosion due to runoff, so it's proposed to open unlined filter trenches along the southern side of each roadway to collect and infiltrate flows. Any excess flows would overflow into the existing swales. The filter trenches would help draw out water within the sub-base of the roadway, thereby reducing the potential for waterlogging. The proposed changes to the drainage system would physically alter the landscape, but only within very discrete areas that fall within the site boundary and adjacent to the internal access roads. These features will capture water and therefore naturally establish a variety of flora, and this will benefit biodiversity and have a positive effect on landscape value. The small scale and low level nature of these changes mean it is very unlikely that they would give rise to any noticeable change to the development, with the only long distant views into parts of the site that are affected. As such, the incorporation of these features would have no effect on the levels of visual effect of the area, and the plan on the screen shows that the proposed filter drains in deep purple in this in the access tracks in the centre of the site, and the existing swales located in a lighter purple, which are located around the boundary of the site. Next slide, please. Photographs on the screen demonstrate the effects of the water runoff on the access roads, both to and within the site, with the material being washed away. Therefore, on balance and due to the existing nature and use of the site as an operational solar farm, it's not considered the proposals would have any significant unacceptable impacts on the visual amenity of the site, nor have a significant impact on the visual character of the open countryside, landscape value, or the special landscape area or the surrounding area in accordance with the LDP policies. In terms of impact on residential amenity, as a result of the proposed changes, it's not considered the proposed amendments would result in any additional impact in excess of the existing approval. The proposed alterations to increase the number of CCTV poles and cameras at the site are not considered to have an unacceptable impact on any neighbouring residential property, as they will be sited inside the boundary fence, positioned in a downward position and sited away from the shared boundaries with existing neighbours. The proposed alterations to the fence would be sited away from existing residential properties and obscured from views by existing trees and vegetation, and the relocation of the planting will help visually screen the site from view. The changes to the drainage will be located within the site and will therefore have no significant adverse impact on the residential amenities. In view of this, the development is not considered to result in any unacceptable impacts in regard to overbearing, overlooking, overshadowing, nor result in any noise and disturbance above what is currently experienced at the site. In terms of highway safety, the local highway authority has raised no objections to the proposed development, as the proposal will not give rise to any highway safety or car parking concerns. With regard to ecology, initially the authority's ecologist reviewed the submitted landscaping scheme and requested the proposed hedgerow planting was revised to include 5 different species in order to make it species rich. These changes have now been made, and the ecologist confirmed that the revised landscaping scheme is acceptable. In relation to proposed drainage changes, initially the authority's drainage officer raised concerns regarding lack of information provided within the surface water strategy. Further information has now been submitted by the applicant in relation to gradients and filter drain cross sections, which have been reviewed by the drainage officer and have confirmed the drainage details are acceptable. There are no concerns raised regarding trees or green infrastructure on the site. In terms of conditions, given that this is a Section 73 application and involves the reissuing of the original decision, the conditions associated with the original consent have been carefully considered as to whether they need to be reimposed or reworded depending on the content. However, it is worth noting that the works to construct the solar farm at the site are substantially completed, with conditions that have previously been discharged and subsequently no longer necessary. In view of this, a breakdown of how the existing conditions have been removed, reworded and reapplied have been detailed within the officer's report. Therefore, to conclude, is considered the proposed changes represent an acceptable development that would not have an adverse impact upon visual amenity, residential amenity, highway safety, ecology, green infrastructure, trees and drainage in compliance with LDP policies, and the application is therefore recommended for approval subject to compliance with the conditions set out within the agenda pack. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And remember, Councillor Downing.
Yeah, well, I think this may be a first, Chair, where somebody's got planning permission, everything is working, and then something's come in to improve it. It's the first time I think I've ever come across anything, because what it is, I think what they've realised is that the solar panel farm is there for another 20 odd years, and this would have deteriorated if left alone. So I think everything's been put in now to live the life of the solar panel, which is 20 odd years, I think, or maybe 30. Yeah, I think very good. Yeah, I agree with it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jones.
Thank you. I've just thought about the actual solar farm is by Cwmlloyd Nature Reserve. Now, I couldn't go on the site visit when this was first applied for because I was actually on crutches and it wasn't a very easy access, if I recall, and I know Councillor Lloyd went, but I have real concerns. It abuts what was Calais North, and which is now Dunvant and Calais, and all this talk about the flooding and all the different things. How do you know it's going to work? Because if it's so wet, I mean, look at February's been the wettest month for I don't know how many years, and I'm just concerned that water will leak into perhaps water courses or down into actually residential properties. But my main concern is why on earth do we need all those CCTV cameras? I mean, you had 5 and now you're going to 32. It seems a bit overkill. Is there a problem that we're not aware of, that we need this amount of CCTV cameras? And I also want to know that the ecology of Cwmlloyd Wood is actually looked after. It's protected because we've talked an awful lot about the actual site, and the officer has said, oh yes, it will prevent things happening. But I'm very sorry, I've been around quite a long time, and what's good on paper is not always good in practice. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other member wish to speak? Oh, Councillor Tribe, sorry, man.
Sorry. Access to the site is, I take it from the map, it's through a residential area. My only concern would that mean that larger vehicles would be travelling through that area? I think about noise pollution and hazard to pedestrians. And secondly, were there any local consultations or objections? Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I got no one else. No, sure. Nobody online. Just a few things then. Hey.
In relation to drainage, is it going to work? That's all I can say is the details have been scrutinised and looked at by the council's drainage officer, and they've raised no issues with regards. They are happy with the information that's been submitted. In terms of CCTV cameras, I did mention in the presentation they have increased. I do take your point in terms of the number, but they are experiencing a number of antisocial behaviour there and vandalism. So that's the reason why they've required the additional number of CCTV cameras to cover the entire perimeter to try and reduce that and obviously protect the solar panels. In terms of ecology, again, the revised landscaping scheme, we consulted the ecologists and they were happy. They didn't raise any concerns about, the proposed changes having any impacts on the ecology or the woods that you referred to. So there's no issues in terms of that. Access to the site, I believe, is through Wynaloedd Road. I think I visited the site and I came along there, and I think there's sporadic kind of isolated houses along there. The applicant has said the work to do this additional work will take 10 to 15 working days, and they'll just be at the site and gone. So there'll be no kind of additional heavy traffic using the road, to answer your queries. And local consultation was undertaken, but no letters of objection received. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thanks. But no one else wish to speak? No. You can see if that's the case, and you can see the recommendation there is one of approval. So we will take that vote now then, please.
Yeah, Councillor Peter Black. For. Phil Downing.
For.
Alan Jeffrey.
For.
Mary Jones.
Against.
Mike Lewis.
For.
Richard Lewis. Nicola Matthews.
For.
Mark Tribe.
For.
Mike White.
For.
Andrew Williams.
For.
And Paul Lloyd.
And for.
That's 10 for, 1 against, Chair.
Well, that's carried. Thank you very much. And then the next item there then is item 2, find on page 24, and it's over to Pentraquith Road. Thanks, Irene.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, the application is referred to committee as the number of dwelling houses is over 20 and meets the development threshold. So the application is seeking full planning permission for the construction of 34 affordable residential units, comprising of 5 pairs of semi-detached properties and 24 flats. Members are made aware of the update sheets clarifying a highway matter and the rewording of 3 conditions. So the proposed development is on a parcel of land along Pentraquith Road. It's in the Bonamine ward. The slide shows the approximate location of the site identified by the red circle in the context of this wider area. As a point of reference, the Swansea Stadium is to the northwest of the red circle. So this is the counterpart aerial image of the site showing its location within this wider setting. The site is within the urban area and comprises of a derelict, fire-damaged building with hard standing areas. So the part of Pentraquith Road is predominantly residential in character. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the red line boundary and extent of the application site, measures approximately 72 metres wide and 65 metres deep. The site is sloping, and there's an approximate land difference of around 5 metres between the southern boundary and the northern boundary. The south fronts Pentraquith Road, and is the highest, and the northern boundary is adjacent to trees and vegetation, and that's the lowest. A block of flats is currently being constructed on land to the west of the site, and the eastern boundary is adjacent to a path. Pentrechwyth Road is classified as a B road, and there's a bus stop in the near the southeastern corner of the site. So this slide shows the overall proposed layout of the site. The two-storey semi-detached dwellings would be positioned along the road frontage to the south. The two blocks of flats would be in 3 stories and located alongside each other on the northern boundary. Through the central part of the site, there would be an access point, an internal road and some parking area, laid out in a T shape. 2 small areas of open space would be provided on the western and eastern flanks, and a small substation would be provided near the eastern boundary. Here are most of the elevations of the proposed dwellings. They would have a relatively simple shape and consistent design, and a subtle change in finishes, either in red or a lighter buff brick, and all will have a black or grey roof tile. Solar panels added to the roof, and the curtilage would include an air source heat pumps. Here are the proposed floor plans. 2 of the dwellings would have 2 bedrooms and 8 would have 3. Externally, a small landscape area would be provided at the site frontage, and the rear would have gardens and access to the parking area. This slide shows the elevations of the 2 blocks of flats. At the largest dimensions, they would each measure 26 metres wide, 12.5 metres deep, and 12 metres to the ridge. They would contain pitch roof and solar panels. Juliet-type balconies would be provided on the front elevation. They would contain, they'd be finished in red and buff brick with a black-grey roof tile. Bin and cycle stores are also provided. So here are the proposed floor plans. There would be 24 flats in total, comprising of 16 one-bed units and 8 two-bed units. Externally, the rear of the flat would contain communal amenity space, as well as access to 2 small open spaces. Parking would be provided along its frontage. So this slide provides you with an overview of how the development would be assimilated within the site, taking into account the level changes. Nearest neighbouring properties are also shown. So the dwellings at road level would be seen at the top of the slide. The middle part of the site shows the section through the middle of the site. And due to the slope, the existing the 3-storey flats on the lower ground will, as a result of the difference in the levels, they would have a comparable height to the 2-storey dwellings at the front. The bottom of the slide shows the front and rear elevations of the flats. So the application has included an artist's impression of how it is envisaged that the site may look following completion of the development. Here is one of those images and the development fronting Pentrechwyth Road. These don't hold any significant weight, but they do provide an understanding of how the site may appear in its context. So turning to the photographs, here this is taken from Pentrechwyth Road, looking at the current condition of the site, which contain a derelict fire damaged building at the front. In the background is the side elevation of the nearest neighbouring property at the east, number 24 Pentrechwyth Road. So this is the photograph also taken from Pentrechwyth Road, but looking in the opposite direction. The bus stop, which is near the southern east boundary of the site, can be seen in the background, and is possible. The southeastern corner of the site, you can see the bus stop, and in the background, you can see the block of flats that's being constructed adjacent to the western boundary of the site. This photograph is taken from the upper part of the footpath skirting the eastern boundary of the site. From here, it's possible to see the topography of the site, with the area containing the damaged building on higher ground, compare the area of hard standing at the lower ground behind. Next slide, please. So this is taken from the lower hard standing area at the rear, looking back up towards Pentrechwyth Road. Next slide, please. And these 2 photographs are looking at the central frontage part of the site towards the nearest neighbouring property to the east, namely 24 Pentrechwyth Road. Next slide, please. And the final photograph mainly shows the side elevation of the block of flats being constructed adjacent to the western boundary of the site. Next slide, please. So the main issues for this application is for the principle of the development, an impact on visual and residential amenity, drainage, ecology, trees and highway safety. So these matters and other representations from various consultees, including 2 letters of objections and 1 support, have been carefully considered in the report that's before you today. So firstly, the site is within an urban area and deemed to be previously developed land, containing a commercial use with derelict buildings. The general character of the area is residential, so the redevelopment of the site for residential purposes is broadly acceptable in principle. So the site currently offers very little in terms of visual interest, and the report considers the proposed development to provide a more positive contribution to the street scene. It has been reasonably demonstrated the site can accommodate both two-storey and three-storey buildings, having particular regard to the sloping nature of the site. The dwellings and flats would have simple but effective design and appearance, integrating reasonably well with its surroundings. The parking area would be largely concealed away from public view, which is another positive aspect. The inclusion of brick would be different to the largely rendered properties in the immediate area, but would not be unduly harmful to the visual amenity. Gardens, pockets of open spaces and soft landscaping, together with a wooded setting to the north, would assist in breaking up the buildings and physical infrastructure. So subject to conditions, the report recommends that the scheme is visually acceptable. In terms of residential amenity of future occupiers, the report explains that all units would meet the Council's internal space standards, including the Welsh Design Quality Standard. All units would achieve an acceptable standard of internal amenity with light, outlook and privacy, all acceptable for habitable rooms. The dwellings would have gardens appropriate in size and usability, but there is a condition recommending the removal of permitted development rights to protect those garden sizes. The gardens of the dwelling nearest to the western boundary would be partly overlooked by the block of flats to the west. However, the report explains on balance that would not be unduly unacceptable. With regards to the proposed flats, these would also have an acceptable internal amenity, and council guidelines explain that all flats should have balconies. In this case, Juliet balconies are proposed, and there's been justification as why full balconies would not be viable. But on balance, the Juliet balconies and the overall amenity for the flats would be acceptable. A degree of communal outdoor space would be provided at the rear of the flats. This is supplemented by two small areas of open space. Within 300 metres of the site, there is a Brooksby Road playground and a further area of open space, and the combination of these factors, on balance, provides an acceptable standard of external amenity space for future occupiers. So the report considers that the amenities of neighbouring properties would not be unduly affected by the proposed development. Number 24 Pentrechwyth Road is the nearest neighbour to the east. It doesn't contain any windows on its side elevation and is separated from the site by a footpath and some landscaping. The block of flats currently being constructed on the west side is separated by boundary treatments, and the proposed development would not unreasonably harm their amenities. A condition requiring the submission of a management plan would assist in reducing the impact of the construction phase of the development on neighbouring properties. The Highway Authority have raised no objections. A lower level of parking has been deemed acceptable, having particular regard to the sustainable location of the site, noting the nearby bus stop and the type of tenure that the development seeks to provide. Various conditions have been recommended in the interest of highway pedestrian safety. Dwellings would have space to store waste and bin stores would be provided to the flats, and access to these stores would be available by a short distance from the internal road. Ecological survey has been submitted with no protected species identified. Invasive species have been found. However, a condition for its eradication is recommended, and the council's ecologist, environment officer and tree officer all have no objections subject to conditions. Foul drainage would connect to the public sewer. Welsh water is no objection subject to a condition. Surface water would be dealt separately by SAB legislation, and the fire service also raised no objection. Given the previous commercial use of the site, there is potential for the ground to be contaminated. The pollution control section has examined the scheme and have no objections, but recommend conditions for further site investigation, and any contamination that is found would be appropriately remediated. Council policy indicates that a residential scheme of this size requires planning contributions, in this particular case towards affordable housing and education. The scheme is proposing 100% affordable units, but the policy for this area only requires 10%, and the council's housing officer has no objections to this, and its provision would be secured by a legal agreement. The Education Department have indicated that a contribution of approximately 46,000 is required towards the provision of English medium secondary school places, and this would also be secured by a legal agreement, and there is capacity within schools for other types of education. Whilst on-site provision of open space is relatively small, consultation has taken place with the Council's Parks Department, who have indicated that nearby parks have already been upgraded and are accessible. As such, no further off-site contributions would be required for open space. There have been 2 letters of objections by the same person and 1 separate letter of support. The issues associated with the objection letters have been summarised in the report and range from impact on residential amenity, noise and health impacts, access, parking and highway matters, ecology and biodiversity, and impact on education. These issues have been carefully considered and addressed within the appraisal section of the report. It is concluded on balance that these matters do not outweigh the overall acceptability of the scheme. As such, the report recommends the planning permission should be granted with conditions. 3 of those conditions have been amended via the update sheet that's before you, and there's a need to enter into a legal agreement to secure the affordable housing and education contributions. The delegated powers is also required to refuse the application if the agreement is not signed within 3 months of committee's resolution. So, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that thorough presentation there. Thank you. And first I got Kelly. Elsie, Kelly, are you with us? Got you 5 minutes to address us.
Hi, sorry, I'm Kelly's partner. I'm Daniel, so I'll be speaking for her.
Right, okay. Got 5 minutes to address the committee. Thank you.
Basically, we support the development with provisions of there's issues with the parking in the area as there is. Between number 24 Pentwick Heath Road and the development, there's a lane which a lot of the local cars park in already. Obviously, that's going to be removed with the development, causing a bigger parking issue. With the development as well, there's going to be put in the buffers for the safety of the junction going into the site, which is going to remove more parking spaces on the main road as well. It's a very, very busy highway into a densely populated area. It's a lot of people speed up this road and it's not safe. Also in the plans of the development, it says there's insufficient parking provided. And there's obviously going to be houses built on adjacent to the main road. So where are all these cars going to park? It's going to result in people parking illegally, dangerously, and there's a lot of children in the area, especially our children as well. And we are worried of the safety of the local area. With the flats on the west side of the development, this has clearly been considered because they put underground parking on the flats. So I'm not sure how they've had to do that in the flats, and this is being approved with the insufficient parking in a dangerous area. There's a lot of elderly people in the area as well who use the bus, and we feel that the bus stop is not going to be safe because there's going to be so many cars parked on the main road, so many new houses. Where is everyone meant to go? And it is going to result in illegal parking. So apart from the parking, we are happy to support the development. It's not very safe the way the plan is at the moment. That's all we have to say, really.
Okay, thank you very much. And then we have Richard Bowen is with us on behalf of the developer. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the committee on behalf of the applicants for the opportunity to address you today in relation to the application for the construction of 34 affordable homes on this derelict, fire damaged and former commercial site along Pentwick Heath Road in Bonnymine. This application's been thoroughly examined in relation to the development as proposed, resulting in no objection, as you've been made aware, from the statutory consultees, and a positive recommendation from your professional officers. The officer's report is transparent, balanced, well informed, and provides a reasoned justification as to why the application is considered acceptable. Notwithstanding this, the applicant is fully aware that there are concerns expressed by a local resident. The officer's report, as you will be aware, is sought to address these issues in detail and confirms that the application site is in fact brownfield land, which national planning policy supports for the redevelopment of in favour of greenfield sites, and any short-term impacts associated with the construction works relating to the development will be reduced through the contractor's implementation of a construction management plan, which is to be conditioned as part of any planning permission. Notwithstanding this, I'd like to take the opportunity to reinforce the fact that we consider that the application accords with the spirit of both local and national planning policy, and that there are no material considerations which indicate the application as unacceptable. It's considered that the key technical areas which are fundamental importance to the determination of the application are dealt very thoroughly in the officer's report, and I would reiterate that no statutory consultees, including the Council's own Highways Department, have raised objection to the application on highway safety grounds. With respect to car parking provision, members will note from the report that the Council's Highways Department acknowledge that this is an affordable housing scheme in a sustainable location, and in terms of parking provision, have no objection to the on-site parking provision proposed. In terms of the comments that we've heard regarding the side access lane and the area to the front on the public highway, the side access lane isn't being affected by the development, and the area to the front, including the bus stop, isn't being affected by the development, with all parking provision being within the curtilage of the site. Swansea's council's affordable housing needs prospectus states that as a corporate strategic priority for the council is to ensure that everyone within the county has access to good quality housing. The local housing market assessment states that 800 new homes are required within East Swansea, which is where the application site lies. This current scheme is for 100% affordable housing, above that which is required under the policy, with the proposed affordable housing mix and tenure acceptable to be part of the above mentioned housing strategy. It's also confirmed through the application process that the local authorities housing section are supporting the scheme through the Welsh Government's grant funding programme. The technical information submitted to accompany the application has been subject to detailed scrutiny and addresses all the comments of the technical consultees who raised no objection to the scheme. As you'll be aware, Section 38 of the Act requires decisions to be made in accordance with the development plan, unless other material considerations dictate. We consider that the proposed application accords with the development plan and that there are no other material considerations which negatively outweigh this, and that on balance the application is acceptable. Given the above and the fact that the development doesn't cause any demonstrable harm to the matters of acknowledged importance, we respectfully request the committee endorses the officer's report and resolves to approve the application subject to the legal agreement and the conditions to be imposed. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, then, thank you. First off, Councillor Black, you had your hand up there.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. First of all, I do sympathise with the objection in terms of the speed of traffic on that road. I think some sort of calming scheme would most probably help that, but that's separate. Yeah, separate to this application. The question I've got really is about the Section 106. I mean, we've been told this is 100% social affordable housing, and yet we're only actually locking in 4 affordable units. So if it's 100%, why don't we lock in all the units as affordable for the future, so to make sure that that's there? And secondly, I noticed the second part of the recommendation on Section 106 is that the affordable houses will be social rented tenure, which I think is very acceptable. I'm just wondering, when we talk about affordable housing, there's all sorts of different types of affordable housing. There's intermediate, which can be up to 80%, and the social rented this thing. So in this case, I think we're saying there should be social rented, which is excellent. But I just think in future, when we talk about affordable housing, we should actually specify what type of affordable housing are there in the Section 106, so that we're aware, is it going to be intermediate, or is it going to be social for that? But I do question why we're only locking in 4 affordable units when all the units are affordable.
Thank you. Good. Oh, Councillor Richard Lewis first, then Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just a query, really, Chairman. I would like to ask you, or the officer, What's the name of the pub here? Because I remember I used to drink it. I'm sure I used to drink in the pub with a chap from the Evening Post quite often.
Rising Sun. was it?
Rising Sun.
Rising Sun. Oh, it's not the one there. I'm worrying these days now, having read that the Welsh government is going to hit pubs with an extra £6,000 extra taxes, and
That's all.
yeah, this is the problem. I mean,
Yeah, well, it's long gone, Councillor.
you know.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's just a query in relation to the condition regarding the on the waste management. Clearly, I would like to know, obviously, as a risk assessment been carried out by the Waste Management Department, because my concern, reading the report, obviously, is about the vehicles gaining access to the bin store and having to move containers in between vehicles, and it could possibly be moving vehicles. Yeah, that's my concern, really.
Yes, no. Councillor Mary Jones.
Thank you, Chair. That was one of my questions that Councillor White just asked. On page 35, it says that the crews would not be able to pull up to get the wheelie bins out. And then it says the direct pass from the bin store to the rear of the vehicle, the junction would be blocked by car parking spaces. So I would like to know how they're going to get them out. You've all gone black, by the way. There we are. And also on page 35 again, we've got this local authority tree officer. We've got the RPA of trees. I don't think anybody would know what that meant. So I was quite concerned about that. And also it says about tree T4, about a bat survey, but I couldn't see if it had been done. And I'm in favour of the scheme. I just would like the questions answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Got no other hands up to speak? No? And on screen, I got. Can't see. Just a couple of points for them, please.
Sure, yeah. I'll leave the highway matter to the end. Maybe my colleague in highways will be able to assist on that. But in terms of the waste, on the screen now, the waste, the bin stores for the flats, for example, are the two small structures that flanks the northern part of the building. So you've got the block of flats at the north, and right at the very end, on the left and right hand side of that, you've got the bin stores. Now then, they have a pathway that directly connects you to the road. And that pathway is about 12 meters long between the door and the road. Now then, that pathway is about 1.5 meters wide. And we consider that that is sufficient to be able to actually take the bin from the bin store 12 meters towards the road where the bin lorry would pull up. That seems to be a fairly reasonable approach that that we've taken. There is a direct line of sight from the bin store to the road by that path, which is 1.5 meters, about 1.5 meters wide. Talking about the tree protection area, you talk about RPA. RPA means route protection area, and T4 can be seen on the northern boundary of that on the site you can see. And we've had confirmation, and it's in the report, that T4 is not affected by the development. And as such, a tree survey is not, a protected species survey is not required for that tree. But we do have a condition that requires tree protection measures to be installed prior to construction and development of the site. So that will protect those trees then that's on the outside the site, but on the northern boundary. With regards to the section 106, the affordable units, it will be specified on social rented 10, and that's been specified in it. The policy, we have to make decisions based on the policy that we have. We do have policies for affordable housing, and it defines that this area requires 10% we can't then shift the goalpost further beyond the 10%. If you wanted to do that, that probably would be something that you want to engage as the discussion for the revision of the LDP. So it would be unreasonable for us to push it even further. But the applicant's intention for this to be 100% affordable, but we can't legally secure beyond that, only what the policy requires us. So we've got to follow that. I think I've covered everything apart from highways. Does my colleague would like to comment on highways, please?
Thanks, Dalian. Yeah, we've assessed the development over several iterations, and we're comfortable that it can be adequately accessed. Bin lorries, cars, and things that are expected to use it can fit into the access. The parking, although a bit below the SPG, is appropriate, we feel, for the area, given the type of tenure, the type of levels of car ownership that you typically see in Bonamine, that does have quite a high number of properties that have no or one car. The applicant has regularised the junction into the development, and will be, as part of that, needs to move a bus stop slightly, and has also offered to increase the amount of residence parking spaces available on Pentraquith Road, which obviously the occupiers of the new development wouldn't qualify for permits for that because they've got off-street parking.
Right, thank you. Councillor Black first, and then Councillor Downing.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think obviously we'll need to revisit this in the local development. I think there needs to be some flexibility in terms of affordable housing in that term. Just going back to this bin store, what gradient is this path? That's, 36.
It's going uphill.
I know, is it going uphill or is it? I mean, as the ward councillor, Chair, you may well get quite a few phone calls about refuse not being collected on this site. Yeah. Especially in the pouring rain.
And the bin's ending up a mile away.
On the screen before you, you've got some sections of the site.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to decipher this as quickly as I can for you. You should be looking at basically slide 4. So it's the middle part of the site on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
Gives you an idea of the levels. So on the right-hand side, you've got Pentraquith Road, then the 2-storey properties. Then you've got the gap in the middle, which have got everybody's gardens and the parking area. And then on the left-hand side of that fourth, of the item number 4, you've got the block of flats. And on that side, you can see the small dark grey black structure, and that is the bin store. I would say that isn't an unreasonable gradient level.
Well, maybe not unreasonable to take it down to the road. But if you're in pouring rain and take it back up again, might be more difficult. I do think this is a bit of a stretch, but
Yeah, I just referring back to Councillor Black and his revisiting the LDP, because I always get a bit flummoxed on affordable housing and social housing.
Yeah.
So are we getting 100% affordable, 100% social? Or what is the mix going to be, if there is going to be a mix?
Social.
The reporter, councillor. Yeah.
Yeah, this is why I asked the question, Chair. As the waste management company carried out the risk assessment, I think it's important that we do involve all our departments. But as you say, the site obviously has a gradient one, and obviously taking into consideration the weight of those containers when they're actually full. You know what I mean? But that's the only issue I would have, is that we've asked that department to carry out the risk assessment with possibly the person that's doing the site, to advise them what would be acceptable.
The honest answer is I'm not aware of a risk assessment that's been undertaken. But it's not uncommon to develop on sloping sites either, and it's not uncommon for, you know, there are far more sloping sites than this in terms of across Wales. We're talking about a distance of around 11, 12 metres. We're talking about, I appreciate the gradients from the evidence that I can see on the plans that's before you doesn't show a particularly steep gradient, but I do appreciate I'm not a person who works in the refuse section, so I wouldn't be able to say that. But there is nothing really that suggests to me that it's an unacceptable arrangement, unless that anybody here has evidence to the contrary to that. So I have to follow what I can see on the screen and the plans that have been assessed, and it seems to be an arrangement that's not unreasonably acceptable.
Yeah, exactly, and the same applies to the already well on its way to completion building next door. They'd have the same gradient. Yeah, Jonathan, you wanted to say something?
Thank you, Chair. Just to come back on the members regarding the 106 and the affordable housing, it confirms on page 47 that all the properties will be social rented tenure, so that will be detailed in the agreement, so they won't be able to be intermediate.
Does that apply to the 4 properties or all of them?
That is just the 4, but all I think we have it confirmed that it's going to be 100%.
Yeah, but in the section 106, are we specifying that the 4 affordable houses which are social, or are we going to specify that all the properties should be social rented?
We can only tie the 10%.
Yeah, so only 4 of them then. Yeah.
Chairman, the question worries me. If you get an elderly person living in these flats and they got this bus to build a push uphill, surely, really, it's up to the council which collects the rubbish. They got small down in Gow. We got small vans flying around. I mean, that to me would be the answer. Because at the end of the day, if you've got some old dear there, I'd have a job to push it uphill if it's full of half a ton of weight or something like that on a wet day. I mean, you know, I think we worried. At the end of the day, the scheme is, I think it's a great scheme. I have no problem with that. I'm sure that the rubbish can be sorted out one way or the other. If some old dear, and in fact, the council does do it. If for elderly people, I've done it in my ward in the Uplands, where they couldn't take their rubbish out. The council actually arranged for people to come and pick it up. So I can't see any problem.
I think, Chair, these are big community bins, which we're talking about, aren't we, in the bin store, where all the residents will put their rubbish into that one bin. So that is quite a large bin to take back up a slope. So I do think that maybe, I mean, obviously this application is acceptable, it's fine, but I do think as the housing association is sitting at the end of the table, they do need to revisit this. So I can see problems in people taking that large bin back up that slope, particularly on a rainy day, and there are quite a few rainy days in Swansea.
Never.
Yeah. Well, as you rightly say, Councillor Lewis, I mean, we have exactly the same in our ward, but there's a small truck comes along.
Yeah.
I'm sure that can be accommodated.
I'm sure, Chairman.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's your ward, Chairman. I'm sure it will happen tomorrow.
Leave it to me. Okay. Oh, thank you. I got no one else. Yeah, there was nothing else there. No, was there? Right, okay. And no other member wished to speak. I can't see anyone online either. Okay, yeah, well, I mean, yeah, as one of the ward members strong in support of the scheme, the issues that we've had raised with us since this building went on fire nearly 4 years ago, and it's been a nightmare trying to, well, between getting hold of different organisations and agencies, and you know, residents in the area very much in support of it, and took on board the issues that have been raised about parking and so on. The front road is residents parking only, so no one else can park there, and that remains. You've got your bus stop right outside. Everything there is sustainable, park, school, everything, which, you know, brings piece of wasteland much into much needed use. There's a huge housing list, waiting list, and here we are, you know, putting a small contribution to tackling that. So, I'm happy now that some of the issues that were raised have been taken on board regarding parking, etc. And personally, yeah, I'll be voting in favour of it. But that's sorry.
Just one point, Chair, when you did mention because of the housing waiting list, we don't give planning permission because of the housing
No,
waiting list.
absolutely not. But I'm just saying, as a
Yeah.
local member, that the people that we got waiting for housing.
Yeah.
Thank you. No, it's sorry. No, because no, you are quite right. But I'm just putting it as a local member. So right, you got no one else wishes to speak, Gareth. When you're ready, please, we can take a vote.
Yep. Councillor Peter Black,
For.
Phil Downing,
For.
Alan Jeffrey,
For.
Mary Jones,
For.
Mike Lewis,
For.
Richard Lewis, Nicola Matthews,
For.
Mark Tribe,
For.
Mike White,
For.
Andrew Williams,
For.
and Paul Light.
For.
That's 11 for unanimous, Chair.
That's carried. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for your contributions.
Sorry, Chair, somebody's speaking. We can't hear anything.
Just waiting for the room to clear first, Councillor. Okay then, thank you. Okay then, the next item on our agenda is item 6, is to move the exclusion of the public, and members, Jonathan, so Jonathan. Switch off the online. Yeah.